Hello everyone, welcome to another Mini Meet the Masters. Today we are going to talk about Pablo Picasso. So he's without a doubt the most well-known artist of the 20th century. So there you have it, maybe of all time. Most people, if they have to name you three famous artists, Picasso would be one of them. Okay, so here's his full name: Pablo Diego Jose Francisco de Paulo Juan Nepomuceno María de los Remedios Cipriano de la Santísima Trinidad Ruiz y Picasso. He went by Pablo Ruiz y Picasso, and then later dropped it down to just Picasso. Okay, so a couple words to know. Abstract. So abstract is something that doesn't look like a real object. It's just color, form, shape, texture. Your eye doesn't necessarily recognize anything. If it's fully abstract, it doesn't look like any kind of object you would recognize, like a house, a dog, or a person. And Cubism is kind of an art form that started out with an object and then kind of deconstructed it, broke it down into all these different geometric shapes. And over time, that deconstruction became so intense that the original object was not actually recognized anymore. I'll give you an example of that. So here is a portrait he did of Fernand. She was kind of his girlfriend at the time. And so not particularly flattering, but you can see all the geometric shapes, but it's still very clearly recognizable as a person, right? So here you have another portrait that he did a year later, and you can see how you can kind of make out a face, but it's so deconstructed that it's mostly abstract. If you covered up that one little corner of the painting, you wouldn't know what it was. So here is a map of the world. The little arrow points to Spain. He was born in Malaga, that's down where the green arrow is. And then he moved to Paris when he was about 20 and did a bunch of work in Paris. That was kind of the art center of the world. And he lived in France for most of the rest of his life. And then later he moved to the south of France and did some work there. But even though he lived in France for most of his later life, he actually remained a Spanish citizen until he died. So the family moved. His dad was a painter too. Did very realistic kind of paintings, mostly of birds, and so the family moved to Barcelona, which, if you remember, Juan Miro that we talked about last week, he was from Barcelona as well, and so Picasso applied to art school there when he was only 13. He was like the youngest students ever admitted, and the application process, which usually took a month to complete, he did in 1 week. He was just already a really good artist. So here is a painting he did when he was only 14 years old of his sister having her first communion. And here you have a painting he did when he was 15. It's a drawing, pastel on paper, of his mother. So you can see he was an excellent artist. So in 1900 he moved to Paris, and he didn't have a lot of money. He had a really good friend who died, and so he was just kind of depressed. And remember how you see how we can kind of, when we're sad, we can, kind of feeling blue. Well, this is his blue period, and these paintings are sad. But you can see why they're called the blue period. He kind of limits himself to just these different shades of blue. With a little bit of yellow in there for the face, but generally most of these colors are just shades of blue. So it's called monochromatic, one color, monochromatic. So here is another one that is kind of these kind of bluish, cool tones, and this one. So that is his blue period, and from that he moved onto his rose period, and this kind of marks a transition between being the super poor artist who has nothing to actually making it in the art world. So this is family of acrobats with a monkey and you almost have like this kind of Holy Family feel, kind of traditional posing that they would normally use for like a picture of Mary, Joseph, and the baby Jesus, except these are circus performer and there's a monkey. And this is kind of a hodgepodge of every material he had available. It's painted on cardboard because that's what he had. And actually the hat that the kind of Harlequin there is wearing, that bicorn hat, that is actually not painted. That's just the color of the cardboard. Another one is The Boy with a Pipe, was just a neighborhood urchin who kind of hung out in his studio, and so he painted him, and that painting sold in 2004 for $104 million. So next comes the African period. Very short, but very important because that kind of set the way for what came afterwards. So he went to the show of African art and became fascinated with these ritual masks and the carved statues. And so his art became kind of more stylized. And if you look at that self-portrait, you can see how that mirrors those African masks, you know, with the kind of very overemphasized kind of facial structures. So this is directly what led him into Cubism. So here's just another definition of Cubism. So we have these strong geometric shapes kind of deconstructing, but you also have the fact that the viewpoint changes sometimes in the same painting. Normally if you paint a vase, you're painting it from above or sideways or below, whatever angle you choose, but there's one angle. And in Cubism, they might choose to paint the vase from the side and then go look up and paint some more and actually paint it from the top or paint it from the bottom or paint it from the back side. So the single viewpoint just kind of goes out the window. So here you have a still life, and this is still a recognizable still life, right? So you have a bowl with some fruit, and we can still tell what that is, even though it's starting to get abstracted and we're kind of going towards a more pure shape kind of thing. You can still recognize it. Here we go a step further. Now we're down to pretty much like parallelograms, squares, rectangles, except for those palms in the background. We have pretty much deconstructed this building into geometric shapes. And then here you have, well, what do we have? Want to guess? Any idea? So this is a still life with glass and lemons. It's from 1910, and now you know what it is. You can kind of go with the color choice, kind of the lemon, right? The yellow in there, and you can kind of make out that lemon in the middle, but would you have ever guessed that without the title? Well, anyway, so here is some more artwork from that Cubist period. So you can see all these kind of geometric shapes, and here he just threw in some pretty non-geometric stuff just to make it more interesting. And here you have the three musicians. That's one of his most famous pieces there. So the end of the Rose period kind of marks a transition from being this pauper living in a attic, you know, to being a successful artist. He got married to Olga. Olga was ballerina, and this is a painting of Olga. And you can see he's going back to this very realistic, classical style of painting for a few years here. Maybe just to remind people that, hey, you know, this Cubism abstract thing is not because I don't know how to paint realistically. It's an artistic choice. So he was now well on his way to being rich and famous. This was also the largest painting that he painted was during this time. So this was a backdrop for a ballet that Olga was in. And yeah, it's massive. It was designed to be like a curtain that, you know, came up and down during the ballet. Here's another one from that period as a Pierrot. Anyway, so after that, the period of I can do whatever I want to began, which means he just bounced back and forth between different styles that he liked. Some of them were still Cubism, some of them started being realistic, some of them looked almost naive. So he said of himself, I'm an artist without a style, which is like kind of patently untrue, but but he at that point didn't feel like, you know, he needed to stick to a certain style for any length of time anymore. But his most famous painting is Guernica, and that happened kind of in that time period where he just felt free to start painting whatever he wanted to and however he wanted to. And this one is from 1937. It's huge. It's about 25 feet long, and it was about an event that was just this horrible event where the Basque town of Guernica was attacked by the Nazis, who were in collusion with the Spanish fascist government at the time during the Spanish Civil War. And the town's inhabitants had gathered in the center of town for a marketplace where there were all these families, and bombers came in and dropped fire bombs and just incinerated the town. And it was just this horrible massacre of innocent civilians, and that left a huge impact on Picasso. And so he painted this painting that just shows the horror of that day and the desperation of people and the grief, and stuck with a gray scale to just kind of show that starkness, that grief of that moment. And here you can see it in context, so you can kind of see how big that is. And so here you can see this is, these are just kind of fun because this is a good example of painting things from more than one side. You have the profile of the person. You also have the eyes kind of as if you're looking straight at the person. So perspective, who cares? So, and he just started making things. He made like 50,000 pieces of art in his lifetime. And so this was a sculpture. It's the Chicago Picasso. It doesn't have a name. It was never titled, and nobody really knows what it is. People thought maybe an Afghan hound. Some thought it was a person that inspired it. Here you can see in front of you, his wife later says she thought she had heard it was actually a baboon. Anyway, nobody knows. He did ceramics during this time, so here's some of the ceramics he did. He did printmaking, where he did lithographs. A lot of the art you'll see from now on are prints, so he could make more than one, kind of like Dürer did. Remember we talked about printmaking in Dürer's day, which is why there's so many pieces of Picasso's, because his prints he could make many copies of. So here's Picasso in his studio. And so this is just a series that kind of shows you kind of how he worked the same object in different styles. So doves were important in his life. He had dove caught in his studio, and so the dove shows up in his work a lot. So this is the Dove of Peace from 1949. Then you have Child with a Dove. That's a really early piece, even before his blue period, kind of when that started. You can see all those blues in there. But I love the sincerity of this, the emotion, how you really connect to this child. Here's another of his dove. I love this one. It's just so joyful. All those just kind of squiggles of bright color, kind of flower-like. And then you have this one, just very simple, very effective. So here's another dove. So this one is collaged. So cut out and then pasted to a kind of drawn background. And here's a completely different one where he painted actually his view out of studio of his doves. So you can do doves any number of ways. So it would be fun to maybe do your own dove. But we have a different project today. More on that in a moment. All right, so I will leave you with this quote. All children are artists. The problem is to remain an artist when you grow up. So take that to heart. Stay an artist. Okay, time to make some art.
All right, everybody, so I think this will work. So what we're doing today, this is going to be really fun. It's called a blind contour self-portrait. So I set up a mirror right there. You can just go in your bathroom and do this when this video is done. But you need just a pretty big piece of paper, so you don't really mind if you run over. And you need some kind of marker. Color does also not matter. So 2 rules here. Number 1, you can't look while you're drawing. Okay? So you just look at yourself in the mirror and you try to draw without looking at your paper. And if you can't do it, you can get a big cardboard box, look over the top of the box and draw inside of the box. So it's really hard not to cheat, but that's kind of the fun. And then the second rule is you can't pick up your pen. So all your drawing is going to be one long line, okay? So let's go see what this looks like. It's really fun because it looks really crazy at the end. So I'm going to start drawing. So I'm going to try not to look at my paper. So I like to start with the eyes because at that point I at least have some kind of idea where I am on the painting anymore. And then maybe I'll do glasses. And the fun thing is this is not going to look like a person. We're kind of going for like a, pretty abstracted style here. So I'm going to draw my hair. go and draw one ear. Go down, try and draw my chin. Again, I am not picking up my pen. This is all one line. So then I'm going to try and do a mouth here. And maybe nose. And go back down, try and finish my face, and then do the other ear. There we go. Wow, look at me. All right, so we have kind of an, abstracted self-portrait there. Hey, there you go. So now I'm going to pause this, and what we're going to do is we're going to actually color in parts of it, and that's going to make it even more look like some kind of Picasso. Okay, so what I did is I just took different colors and I colored in every space where the lines kind of overlapped and created the space. So there I am. Isn't that fun? So there's your deconstructed self-portrait. So have fun with that. I can't wait to see yours. Send me your completed self-portrait, blind contour self-portraits at Starbranch Library at adalib.org. Bye-bye.